strength.
Competitor good?
Wait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Judges good?
It's February 14, 1945. American President Franklin D. Roosevelt secretly has a wartime meeting with the founding market of the Saudi Arabia Kingdom. The meeting was held with the intention of having U.S. access to oil in the Persian Gulf during World War II. However, the world didn't know what could then predict with the truth of Weinstein House, the eventual permanent liquid in the oil of the Persian Gulf of the United States. Jones spoke Middle East and Iran as a global power since the turbulent early 20th century. The security of the Persian Gulf is ordered by the United States political economic research in the late 1970s. The Gulf has been rocketed by a war and a invasion of Iraq represented later state U.S. oil and become integrated. The outcome was not inevitable and established control protecting oil producers and militarization under U.S. watch. Helped the urbanized oil producing states that gave way for more direct power. As a result of the 1973 crisis, oil producing countries seized direct control of production from the Western conglomerates. It wasn't problem deepen the ties between the United States and Gulf oil producers. The United States also do kind of business by arming and positioning resurgence with American power. The United States moved up to build up local military regional order and our military relies upon legally secure basis to regulate the trust and will of life. U.S. global power relies on technical political understanding of forward upward voices. Growing welfare and aspect of legal social intervention which upon our forces may regulate populations, secure territories against future catastrophes, security discourse, national resources, preemptive violence, allowing militaries to continue unbidden. Morsi 11. In the war on terrorism, has been regulated, justified, but not just someone that has circuit and neoliberal argument for presidents regulating the rule of order and power descriptions, professionals aiming to legitimate in the military by political power overseas. U.S. countries present technical political objects. The government tasked with government spaces, which the material elements could unfold, which government is achieved by statistics and probably demands people, territory, and other things to transfer into objects. Risk of future events is preemption. This is the heart of the security disposition. The regulation lies central to the law for the security of armed forces. This project of securitization by political enabling the land power. The DoD pursued access rights of armed forces across the Persian Gulf and the wicked. The Gulf War and new strategy was access come with the securitization of the Persian Gulf emerged by part of the man is meant to seek permanent access rights and extended spacing choices. Its global presence can be read as land power must be secure by extending the architecture by biological power on the ground. It's where politics emerging geopolitics becomes fully reduced from the geopolitical capacity as moves by biological capacity and the ground. Thus, the United States also substantially decreased military presence in the West Asian North Africa region, which the region must include any treaty terrain. U.S. bonds are designed for oil has enabled cycles of conflict and reaction to extremism only which roughly the region can be end-sightless generations of violence, unnecessary wars. Farm 14. The United States is engaged in bombing and drone commands and drone missiles attacks one of the dozens. They occupy top the world's largest concentration of oil. The U.S. military infrastructure world is taken for granted. The garrison has been one of the greatest disaster in American foreign policy. The disappearance of random debate of how easy this infrastructure bases have been to cycles of blowback, supported repressive of opening the block, spread of democracy, arming Iran's overthrow the Shah, the Carter doctrine presided over the expansion to stand permanent guard, the growing of the second conflicts and overseeing wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, and Iran, Joe Moore in Yemen, and Salam in Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. The military spending the presence of Iranian and Arab power institutions brought in Qatar, operations participating in Kuwait, the UAE, and Oman, even without permanent infrastructure, military spending of options, long contingent private military contractors, military cars established drone bases to fight the public withdrawal, more contingent remain ongoing as part of the limit on its motivation for attacks, basis of community catalyst for anti-American radicalization, strong correlation between U.S. presence and al-Qaeda recruitment process, and because the repressive government's U.S. complaint, and our demand efforts to refer the well-being people to take the war for a second to continue, either the U.S. to the sea, and U.S. occupation of the Gulf has caused decades of structural violence in the form of wars, authoritarian crackdowns, and environmental destruction. Jones 12. Peace is not always peaceful. In the 30 years of war, hundreds of thousands of died, violence, poverty, environmental deaths, torture, record, the Russian living conditions, hostile as many in the region. As since began reducing this, the governments are willing to turn to weapons of war versus mostly U.S. and Australian project to break this addiction or requires coming to terms with the history that addiction costs and entails. The U.S. is appears to continue a familiar path, having got relationships with oil and having those relationships with American security interests in the U.S. is our most recent oil war and revenue strategies and preparing for the next one. The role of us is also the best mentor, rising concept, article reading of U.S. military. The role of agitate the center running friends and privilege, alternative conditions, readings of space, and something convincing the superior struggles against U.S. military only by understanding the synergy between global and local practice, giving understanding unworthy lives of international transnational multi-resistance. Thank you. 14. Critical geopolitics, what was contested geographies that instigating fear and insecurity on discourses, liberationist U.S. war, and oriented discourses, advanced geopolitical strategies, when education and introduced to violence, social analysis serves as a critical move, reducing this social relations, and even geographies through education. These geographic observations operate from objective reality from particular locations, investment, religion, and war, resisting the same rushing order, necessitates understanding these frames of preventing alternative geographies to prevent the space from other creates eligibility. This analysis of the violence is authorized for performance, creates the space, or induce answer performance, carries the possibilities of regularizing the undoing of the undoing as a culture, role model resisting crowd photography, creates U.S. interventions in good institutions of education, photography offers a way to reduce the security for imagination that work against the restrictions of us to them, and revolutionary stances against capitalism structures fail, and it really result in mass violence with radical reform. 12, right 15. How is it possible for anti-capitalist forces amassing the power to destroy capitalism, emancipate alternatives of template rush, do not produce a new world, one thing to burn all institutions, other things acquired, to hold emancipatory new institutions from the ashes, failures, and tragedies, and any attempt of radical Russia. There are too many moving parts, complexity, and unstudied consequences, and attempt of Russia unravel, and to such chaos, the revolutionary elites will be opposed, resort to violence and repression, restores the possibility of legislative process of rising capitalism, slashing capitalism, does record strategic logic is needed, and a relationship with the military gains to a liberatory securitization contract, at discourse pace the regions permanently volatile to justify intervention, the identification of risk is neutral, but is politically employed to justify permanent basing structures only by having consequences in the region can we close the gap in civilization and preempt future days. Morsi 11. This course is about insecurity and future market on everyday government, the securitization funded by the employment of technologies to manage interruptions in the future. Strategies are submitted immutable beliefs that securitization to close the gap, security, economic freedom, civilization, inspiring versus the therapeutic argument about permanent interventionism, proceeding, generating risk opportunities were non-existent, fighting terror unleashed elsewhere. The terror will converse both mental and losses and the self-perpetuating and activity crisis celebrated the oral destruction suddenly at least the loophole of the strong Soviet invasion was created with the crisis management. Rumian Secom took over in 1980. Western violence has long history being incorporated into liberal discourse and legitimation as aggregation as exceptional risks of economies where society winds up on the good side. Second's discourse provides a risk of linking responsibility to use military force and focusing solely on the individual trials of criticism of the global military strategy while we can recognize the economy's limitation and should avert attention from the political purpose of the critique. W10. Attention between scholarly practices and political commitments was obvious. Miller acting the danger use of loose legitimate political power remains a task we're doing. If we have any coherence instead of trying to challenge military mappings, global space, critical geopolitics, while challenging how contexts are constructed, justify violence where politics happen, and who participates in non-necessary self-evident militarization, proliferation, security, discussed many daily practice, part of geopolitics, or engagement with rationalization, military power to practice legitimate military action or abandon. With them, we have no interest in thinking the conceptual infrastructure of military violence by expanding the critical edge has its agenda to the political purpose of critical geopolitics by leaving out the big things.
Good for cross.
Yeah.
Okay. On the roll of the ballot,
Yeah.
did you read the spec stuff?
Did I read the specs up?
Yeah, like you said, like under the roll of the ballot, there's like 3 like points there.
No, I didn't read it out loud.
Okay, you didn't read it out loud. Okay, perfect. On to the app proper, I guess. So like, what does the app do? Like, what is the app attempting to solve?
The widespread structural violence that has occurred as a result of United States militarism.
Wait, so is this like, do you gain any offense absent just the resolution? Like, do you gain any pre-fiat offense from reading this app?
I mean, no. The pre-fiat offense is strictly a framing argument. I.e., the roll of the ballot, we garner offense from the material violence that we solve.
So it's just like, so is the app defending consequences or consequentialist kind of like ideas?
I mean, yeah, we are trying to solve material impacts that we derive.
Okay,
from
perfect. So like, basically what your app is saying is that capitalism is bad, and that kind of the resolution or the app is key to solve this. Is that all it's doing?
I mean, I don't think you can simplify the entire app into 2 sentences. We've made an argument about how United States militarism and intervention in other countries has caused long periods of
but the only
structural
impact
violence.
of this is just like consequentialist impacts, right? Like for example, like structural violence and like people dying.
That's the impact the one I see is discussed, yeah.
Okay, so it's only relying on consequences, nothing else.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I guess on like the capitalism stuff, specifically, how does like just pulling out or like reducing the military presence a specific amount solve global structures of capitalism and like securitization?
Sure, the argument is that when you force the state, as through the act, to do an action that is contrary to its desires, you're basically saying that it's an argument of not sort. You're not making a demand of the state. You're not like pleading with the state to do this. Instead, the state almost works for you in a sense, and we're saying that taking steps to resist like the ways in which the state operates and perpetuates structural violence is like important.
What does that mean? I think I just heard like words. What does like working with or like letting the state work with you? Like what does that actually mean? Like how does it solve?
Sure, we're saying that the United States wants to have military presence in this region, and it
Okay, wait,
perpetuates
so
the
they're
impacts
just
the one
saying
talks
that, so
about.
they're just saying that we should do something that the US doesn't want to do in any instance, and that would solve the impacts of the app? Like for example, if the US didn't want to like send a soldier there, then we say, oh no, don't send a soldier. Would that be enough to solve?
No, we've identified
Okay,
a
then what's the
specific
bright
scenario
line
the
of
act talks
solvency?
about.
What's the bright line of solvency then?
I don't understand what your question is.
Like
what
how much is
what
enough?
are you talking about?
How much is enough? Like you say that like this app action and like kind of rejecting what the US
How
wants
much
to
is
do
enough?
key.
The resolution?
Yeah. Where do you specify that in the 1AC?
The plan text? What is your question?
Okay, well, that's fine. On cross there. Let me take like a few seconds. Stop right there. I have 352 left. I'll send the talk. It's for the case.
Can you slow down on tags, please?
Tags?
Yeah, taglines.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of. Well, there's only so many cards in I heard nail bomb. It's not gonna be that bad. It's like 6. I'm sorry, I had to close my doc to put it in speech off. Let me just open it. Open it. Can I borrow your stand?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, is everyone good? Eva?
Yeah.
There.
Interpretation, debaters must read all arguments in the speech doc they want to apply to the round to clarify. They must not say to check the doc for arguments they want to be validated. Violation respect. When you're gonna rule it out, but don't read it within the text. Don't read it actually. Standards 1 is times 2. It means you have infinite time to make arguments. Because you can just say things like check the doc for my responses to the K, which makes it impossible to win since time controls their ability to make arguments. Second distracts you. It just fast. Things like you having hyperboles in a long paragraph definitions extending them the next speech by saying I told you to check the doc for spec. I expect that. No, for me to express the argument. I might expect to give me that kills my priority since I won't read the arguments by no spec, and you will extend them to whenever you have to read. Consider violence considerable debate by garnering offense or arguments outside of speech. I'm sending docs and proceed on a facile competition with UP's law honor system, which a forces to convention to value your arguments and be excused particularly since I have to waste prep time. No things you just about fairness, about all arguments, presume fairness, evaluation, be fair evaluation, be excuse, makes evaluation of substance impossible. See debate is an activity which requires fairness, drop the debate, when it turns parents, read the abuse of practice in the future, where this is not work with legal laws, which key norm setting, and if it's practice, die out 2 times 2, otherwise, we repeat a bunch of abuse of practices for the time after the episode see the runs already been excused as impossible to validate the rest of the community terms. One reason, but it considers race and margin, what counts sufficiently fair, which symptoms as much abuse possible to norm setting, encourages the most fair rule through being, community models through judgment, reasonability, advice, the question of whether judging is sufficient, which takes around out of the debaters. Yes, no, yes, one asserts legitimate theory, but good theory, debaters, abuse includes on a shell, even as good norm, 2 vetting, incentivizes people to view abuse and script counter pursuing the RBI, which increases the existence of bad norms, 3 forces debaters to argue for bad practices, even if they realize their interest wrong, which kills substance debate for and norm setting. Since we have bad theory debates here, you're on use norm setting model 1 sold, large abuse for hours, and abuse only matters on our time to use outside activity since it encourages deep reflection and debate about what the best world debate looks like. It's trapped towards it. One is theory ways more lexicality if the next abuse is reaction to half abuse, which means justified 2 norm setting. 1 3 can have said norms only once we so we can't fully the 3 empty abuse. Otherwise, we would justify the half in theory and not learning and allows them to get away with them to abuse or being the better theory later for reject theory or way to stay. Get the last word and will never theory if they can double much of new reasons articles first with 3 empty even they are winning to the office. We get to our theories, keep check back against one of your abuse and the shell. Second shell. Interpretation at all TUs amid distributing tournaments debaters must disclose all concerns speech talks open source with highlighting NDCLD wiki within 1 hour after bidding a evaluation screen toss the doc review 4 rounds of tournament and around and Lamberson CC centers 1 debate resource activities. You'll say people will see of course that's good is the only way to truly level the playing field for students such as novices and debaters from small programs who have evidence that open source is the only way to verify pre-run that content because otherwise you could highlight authentically. That's the voter maintaining ethical practices is key to being good academics, and we should not be able to verify you cheat and you can't deny abuse you open source somewhere else, but not all that means you have to win those practices figure out is good truth testing. The role of the ballot is for the debater who proves truth or false. The resolution 1 considers some only truth and false. A resolution is on the ballot. Every turn registration rulebook and NC handlings explicit labels at the states of form class. Place the states point for class means its intrinsic activity be burdens around on the ballots for means to prove true negate means for false. That was a jurisdiction judges internationally bound by the considered rules of activity who in truth testing is intrinsic component speech times declaring what it means to judge and have the authority to change the rules once they enter their own B controls internally. Tech pragmatics because rules are the basis for particularly in prep either another model of debate theoretically be preferable as internally by the fact we operate on the assumptions model 2 inclusion of rule of the ballots bracket all positions that are on your own which A kills no exclusions all legit generics topic rep games useless and how to engage in PX all types of violence that isn't the regular type you talk about which occurs in comparison between which violence is worse and C. Skepticism is correct. One motivation, ethical principles must be intrinsically motivational, otherwise agents have no commitment to following principles. Absent this, ethics can't guide actions that could agree X is bad, yet still imply that I'm going to do X regardless. However, no universal motivation exists. Wittgenstein. Propositions are only relative good. The real expression that absolutely right road would be the road which everyone is seeing it would. With logical consistency, you have to go. The absolute good would be one which everybody independent states and inclinations necessarily bring about state affairs. That's the course of power of an absolute judge. 2 culpability ethics must hold agents culpable, otherwise we cannot be responsible for moral wrongdoings since they correspond to terrible and will happen regardless of whether we advise against them. However, willing fails and agents lack control points all. We are flesh the molecules, but the law also faces the molecules in your brain on the property of your environment. Everything you must come down to molecules for your own processes set outside of our brain structure. We are solely conscious of our brain. 3 moral facts are impossible due to is on gap gray is bracketed for clarity. A the gray is bracketed for clarity. Anti-really sees no reason that ought to be the case is fact and be no reason that we could never know such facts. Facts are actual things. What ought to be is a different actual world. People aren't doing what they ought. How can it ought to be a fact when what ought to be is a different form actually exists? There's our moral facts and 4 arguments for evolution by 218. Natural selection has 4 capacities to go to moral judgment does not require the morality to be true, but only that it be evolutionary advantageous. Evolution is aimed on processes that are reliable but adaptive. Humans that effort those to make moral judgments regardless of evidence and individuals more. If it was desires to help or some otherwise sense of requirement that changes motivation, moral beliefs are absolutely unjustified. Thus, I can the skeptic would negate the resolution 1, the skeptical conclusion being true triggers permissibility denies that moral obligation exists. That negates asymmetric next is fine, expressing obligation, which is absolute corrective obligation. You vote next as a trichotomy prohibition obligation permissibility, improving 1 to 2 other 2 semantics outweighs A is given to since we primarily in the wording of the rest and B is considered the rules of the basis. The judge is obligated to vote on the resolution will text B safety. It's ethically safer to pursue the scope since we know with the scope, but can't know whether that will be good or not. If ethics you're going to see logic propositions require positive justification before being accepted. Otherwise, one would be forced to accept the validity of logic contradictory propositions regarding subjects. One and something about I1 you. Nothing about you won't have to presume that both the P and P are both true. Something negates one statements are more often false than true. Since I can prove something false in infinite ways, but true in only one, 2 as we don't believe in theory's case.
On the framework under consequentialism, any action will be permissible. One is infinite chain of action. There are infinite entities. Each action that I may take meaning we can never know if it's good or bad actions for usual bees and possible. It can possibly result in many ways. For example, you told me to save 2 babies rather than 1, but there's a chance that baby turns out to be Hitler, in which case you told my actions. That means this means any actions permissible bees and the unparticular entities. 2, you told validates entities. Not the way to choose those entities, but the way we obtain is an end. And ends through an action, and you told ignores the action taken, ignores the action taken, and it only cares only about the entities. So technically, any action permissible under utopias. When it condemns action, it will condemn the end of the action until cap good. Capitalism is sustainable, self-correcting alternatives that are false diagnostics and the wrong solution. Trigger 20. Last 2 centuries brought vast improvements in living standards, billions of from poverty, life expectancies, risen that progress can't keep up with capitalist economies. Today's problems are best addressed by private enterprise markets. Our members are better selling prices. Markets are also getting rationing gross better. Functioning saving as desirable. Leftist governments would be historically and all these socials. Government and others. Innovation helps the economy see more through research, which form productivity growth. Deficit may end up being less. Branching stock is on the rise in many capitalist economies. And consumption-driven warming is inevitable. Only fast growth. Serves innovation and solve it. Etc. 17. Energy growth needs cannot be more. Misguided climate change is exacerbated by rising demand. Energy will do energy doubles up in growth. Not more practically, it would reflect the aspirations of billions around the world to rise to the rich world. However, self-developing, we want to consume more. We can't do that. Resource available greatly outstrip potential needs and problem less and accessing in a feasible way. That depends on innovation. Take energy, solar is it's still too expensive. The solution, massive investment in clean energy and R&D. The fundamental driver here is economics. If we want to win against climate change, one thing that matters more than all others, make renewable energy cheap. Fastest solution, not to stop growth, but to innovate. And growth is key to solve. Is key to space colonization. Which is number 19. Space colonization is realistic. There's probably strategies will change towards the growth, contraction of economic activity would eliminate energy, which would reduce space colonization, establishing colonies would mean growth. Degrowth might be energy that would colonization, and space colonization operates with a much larger frame all future generations. And hold on, when I see to a burden of soul, see, I haven't kind of brought that to how much kind of reducing and kind of rejecting the state in itself is in itself going to solve that, which means first that inevitably triggers presumption, which means that they can't actually solve their arguments. Second is that use epistemic modesty, use epistemic confidence, i.e. the probability of the frame, use epistemic confidence, i.e. if skepticism is true, we only evaluate arguments under skepticism, i.e. all arguments are permissible, which means you don't allow any root cause claims in, and kind of how other arguments cause extinction and how that outweighs, because epistemic modesty is completely incoherent. How are you supposed to weigh 2 different ethical frameworks and weigh kind of impacts between 2 different kinds of forms of impacts, i.e. if you're trying to weigh between deontology and consequentialism, how are you supposed to weigh which one has a stronger link? How are you supposed to weigh which one outweighs, which means you use epistemic confidence on the framework debate. Third is that you don't evaluate extinction outweighs specifically because that we don't have a moral obligation to stop any. We don't have a kind of a moral obligation, or as we kind of argue the idea that extinction itself is permissible through the NC, which means that extinction is not an impact insofar as you win the NC. Good for cross.
Cool. The second stuff on the permissibility, the 2-point, U2 evaluates end states. Can you explain this point?
Yeah, so we say that utilitarianism, or like consequentialism, right, the idea of consequences, they only evaluate the end states of the action, right? They don't actually evaluate the action in themselves. For example, one action could lead to 2 different consequences, and in one instance, this action would be justified, but in the other instance, it's not justified, which means that consequentialist theories inevitably just evaluate the end state, which means that it actually means that any action is permissible under a consequentialist framework.
Okay. The moral facts are impossible due to the is-all gap. What's the word in the gray evidence?
I mean, just because something is doesn't mean that it ought to like be. I.e., that your framework, or you don't really read a framework from the one you see, so it doesn't actually solve the is-ought gap, which is key to like actually prove morality and prove an ought statement. So yeah, like just because something is doesn't mean that it ought to be.
Okay, so if I see someone being murdered right in front of me, should I stop that?
Where have you justified normatively in the 1AR or in the 1AC why?
It's a general thing. What do you mean? Just general concept. If I see someone being murdered right in front of me, should I stop that?
I don't know. Should I?
Okay, fair. Can you explain the warrant and the culpability coin evidence?
Yeah, we say that moral facts are like predetermined because of molecules in our brain. Our brain are just made up of molecules, i.e. like molecular biology, right? But all these molecules are kind of predetermined in the way that they decide actions, which means that all our actions are inherently predetermined and we're not
you don't have the
culpable for
ability
actions.
to make any actions. You don't have the ability to decide whether to make an action.
You're just not held culpable for things because all your actions are predetermined specifically by themselves because your brain molecules are what decides them. And those are not constitutive to your own being, but those are features of, like, for example, science and biology.
Okay.
And like physics.
And what's the warrant for motivation?
Motivation, like, for example.
How can I be motivated to do anything if I don't have an ethical obligation to do anything?
Exactly. We say that like the AF does not solve the problem of motivation, i.e., that there's no universal motivation that exists to follow a specific framework or one specific framework that like, for example, solves morality or the idea of morality, because there's no universal motivation. That's literally what our Wittgenstein argument is Wittgenstein evidence is, like the argument's making.
Okay, on the second show, what about like the disclosure situation meant you couldn't prep for this round?
We say that it's like we evaluate theory under like norm setting, which means that since you just disclose all the other rounds, but didn't disclose these, like, for example, 4 rounds of this tournament, 4 docs of this tournament.
That were all lay?
It doesn't matter if they're lay or not, it's still a bad norm.
Okay. On the first show, what's the warrant under the constitutive standard?
Constitutivism, we say that it's constitutive debate that you only evaluate arguments that are like within your speech time or read within your speech time, but you not reading your arguments means that it violates constitutive rules of activity because you evaluate these arguments outside of the speech.
Cool. Let's take running prep.
.130 left. There's no doc. I will slow down on analytics. The order is going to be case, starting on just extension, then line by line the specific case stuff, starting on permissibility, and then it's just going to be top down and CLs.
You can go fast on analytics, I'm just saying go slow on the card tags.
Cool.
Wait, so it starts on permissibility, then
Yeah.
it goes top down, okay.
Anyone not good? Cool.
Extend our role about it was the best method to provide a concept article reading of U.S. military, meaning which method is best presented in this round, and the best method to resist dominant discourses where the military functions. Extend the acid advantage proper. Oral is at the West and the West Asia interconnected since the very first beginning. The endless list for oral has just been used to justify war crimes, structural violence, wars, and totalitarian regimes, and permanently entrenched this area in this war of permanent violence. Resolves the impacts and moves the military from the region, which is the only factor that guarantees U.S. access to oil. The one is a concept of reading of U.S. militarism, which is the only way for us to seek to the dominant narratives and develop solutions about the doctrination in the West. Our current view of the Arab states is that securitization, where we paint the region as violent in order to and unstable in order to justify military presence. After disrupt the mapping which is working, then we can develop larger scale solutions to larger scale, develop solutions to larger scale, material conflicts. On the premise this is a consequential issue, we can definitely predict the consequences of the action, which solves all their offenses, predicting the fact that we cannot predict the consequences of the action. But if I were to drop a pen, I can definitely predict that it would be avoided to drop, which means this argument on space is incoherent. On the impact when they say capitalism is sustainable, the entire affirmative definitely claims that it's not sustainable and results in infinite impacts. They did not contest any of the links or the impacts that when they see red, you just produce this issue and just cross the line to prove that capitalism is not sustainable. On the consumption drives inevitable. The act does not take a stance on decarbonizing just the impacts of the 1AC discussing, which means this argument is incoherent, not applied to the 1AC. On the growth of the space colonization, they didn't read the evidence. It's insanely power attack. There's no extinction claim made once in the entire evidence. On this must read all things that in the doc show. Counterinterpretation, I don't have to, counterinterpretation, I'll defend the violation once if it's progressive. Their model has the affirmative having a scale of a bunch of random things that can never predict for a round, which is doubtless be terrible for it turns all of their friends scales one of the times you the time scanners and incoherent. Just read the words under it. It's just an IB for a little while. There's no reason why that was a massive time scoop, no reason why you couldn't engage with the affirmative. They scratch you discourse about the same arguments. I'm not hiding out a priori and the average is an IB for a specific world about. Obviously someone's reading an a priori, they would obviously say it out loud, which means that this argument itself which means the argument itself which means this argument itself is incoherent and which means this argument itself is incoherent and the constitution exclusive rules debate like it's just like it's IME for a show. It's not a specific argument made in the one I see. This entire thing is incoherent, just on the disclosure. So on the disclosure of power, we're going for a reasonability push on the show, or for reasonability over competing interpreters, because it allows us to actually return back to substance proper and to frivolous, which always because we're actually able to discuss the material impacts of the 1AC talks about, but for reasonability because it's obviously the disclosure norms that the I practice were obviously reasonably good enough. They actually could have engaged in job, but they just chose not to. Ask yourself when you look at the wiki and you look at disclosure norms. Obviously, with disclosure 1AC, the arguments to the further round that solves all your arguments about evidence, ethics, and being able to actually determine if the 1AC was like how to ethics violations or not, and there's no reason why any of the offenses is true. They need to provide you a specific there's a specific violation in this round and how it prevented them from interacting and how it specifically prevented them from interacting in this round. On the truth testing, prefer the role of the ballot term basically every round is compared to this world these days. On predictability, every single round is a world these days. Next two is that the truth testing is terrible for Clash. It would encourage the bears to be as sports warrants. That's why one ethical theory should actually engage with different warrants that actually engage with the like philosophical warrants. Also, just like it's bad for education. It doesn't allow us to talk about the impacts of the 1AC skepticism. One, skep is wrong. We obviously had an obligation to stop the call list. Two, skep merely says that there's nothing valuable about either affirming negating with just an encounter into a action, even subjectively or even arbitrarily care about the framework that's incoherent. Three, reject skepticism. Terms ground their arguments just prove a prohibition, not an active link chain that can even be turned to century. Four, even if morality isn't absolute, we can still create more prohibitions according to the convention morality. For example, if I prove that two isn't true in all cases per skeptical arguments, but having a conversation as okay because in this round we can still morally act and stop the impacts the he talks about.
Oh, okay. 3:52 starting now. Did you read any independent reasons to vote me down?
No.
Did you make any warrants for RBIs?
No, we didn't go for it.
on the permissibility stuff, the only thing you said was that predictions solve, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's done. It's just gonna be, I have to say, it's just gonna be like quickly no RBIs, and like not go kicking like the second shell, the first shell, then permissibility.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
It's just the first shell, then permissibility functionally. Super tops, like super quick at the top, just no RBIs. Okay. Is that good?
Extend RBIs, that means there is no risk for going for the not going for the second shell because they've conceded that they haven't made any RBIs once going for the first shell. The way you should be viewing theory debate is through a norm setting model. Insofar as they've dropped the norm setting model, that means it's a super easy win because our violation just justifies that horrible norms of the shell use. You can extend the ISL's long-term use whereas inner abuse only matters one at a time, which means that we don't have to prove an inner abuse story. We just have to prove why kind of your model of debate or the kind of violation that you have in this round just justifies a bad model of debate. Second is their arguments for reasonability that makes zero sense. They've conceded that it collapses judge of entry abuse reasonability begs the question of what the judge thinks is sufficient, which takes around out of the debater's hands. Them not reading a bright line specifically proves our argument true because there's no argument, there's no bright line for you to evaluate reasonability under IU. What do you think is most reasonable for the shell or reasonable for the shell? Either way, even if you buy reasonability, that doesn't matter because they still haven't responded to functionally two of our standards on the first shell. So you can extend our interpretation that debaters must read all arguments in the speech doc they want to apply to the round I, and the violation is super clear. You spec weighing under the roll of the read it. It literally said that theory comes before roll of the tons of weighing mechanisms that were obviously extremely important to the round, but they have not read them out loud, which they've confirmed in cross-examination that they haven't read. You can extend the strats we scanner. All they said was cross-apply your arguments on infinite regress, but it literally makes zero sense because it's not infinitely regressive to read the arguments that are important within this round, i.e. specking a roll of the ballot, which means it's not infinitely regressive. There's no warrant on infinite regress. They just say that it leads to infinite, even if they say literally all they said is it turns all our fairness claims confusing. You can never predict this for the round, but no, you just read your arguments out loud. It's very simple. It's not a problem of predictability. Them not reading any counter standards is an issue. Why you should floor our standards 100% of the way through. We can extend our strats standard here. It justifies them not reading arguments of the doc. Justifies them hiding things like a priori in a long paragraph for definitions, extending them next speech by saying I told you to check the doc for spec and I spec that I affirm. It means express arguments that I kill by strategies and I won't read the arguments. If I don't read spec and you'll extend it whenever you're around, and which means it justifies them hiding infinite amounts of things and not having to read them and still being able to extend them within the next speech, which means it's a horrible norm, which means that it's supercharged with abuse. Second is that they still violates constitutive rules to debate, which they've completely dropped. completely drop. All they said is I meet, but literally they've not functionally specified or warranted why they meet the shell. You can extend it here that it violates them not reading anything, them not reading specific arguments in the doc that are important to this round. Violates the considered rule debate by generating offense or arguments outside of speech time and setting docs as an act of courtesy, not a fast of competition, but you abuse the honor system which A forces individual value arguments be excused predictably since I have to waste prep time reading what arguments you specified. Theory specifically comes on the highest layer one, even if you like check their 1AC spec, it says that theory comes before the roll of the ballot. Second is that fairness comes first as a voter, which goes completely conceded because all their arguments consume a fair evaluation and debate is a competitive activity which requires fairness, which means the shell must come first, and them not having any offense absent case means that theory comes before case and you should evaluate prior and basically completely drop inter. It means it's a super easy neg ballot already on the shell. We're going for permissibility either way on the case. Permissibility. Extend that under consequentialism, any action will be permissible. There are only arguments to why it doesn't trigger the only consequentialism doesn't trigger permissibility is that predictions work. No, this is literally not what any of our warrants on the permissibility triggers say. One is that you can extend the infinite chain of action argument here that there are infinite end states to each action that I may take, meaning we never know if it's good or bad actions per utilities that possibly result in many ways. They say they don't specifically warrant why prediction works in the first place. Prediction works in the first place, because, for example, util will tell me to save 2 babies rather than 1, but there's a chance that baby turns out to be healing, in which case util would condemn my actions, and this means any action will be done particularly for end states. But second, even if you don't believe this is a good argument, that they basically completely drop that util doesn't only evaluates end states and doesn't evaluate the inherent action of itself. The way consequentialism works, which they specified is their app is dependent on consequences and is reliant on consequentialism. But the way consequentialism works is that it only evaluates the end state of the action, i.e. the consequences of the action, but not the actual action itself. For example, I could say that one action leads to two different consequences and end states, and in one instance this action would be justified, but in the other instance it's not, which means that it only actually evaluates the end states of the argument. It doesn't actually evaluate end states of the action. It doesn't actually evaluate the action in itself, which means that triggers permissibility, because that means that any action would be theoretically permissible under consequentialism, because it means that insofar as it justifies good end states under any form of consequentialist framework, that means it's permissible, which means that it completely triggers permissibility. That means that this is an argument on the case page as why none of their offense actually matters, because it all just triggers permissibility, and they've conceded independently of permissibility negates, which means on semantics, because all justifying expressing obligation, which means absent of proactive obligation, you vote next, as their trichotomy and prohibition, obligation, permissibility, and proving one disproves the other two. That means that they can't even weigh offense under the roll on the ballot, which means it should be a super easy ballot for super easy neg ballot on that, because they literally can't evaluate action under the app. Look, it's a super easy ballot. They basically conceded a shell. Oh yeah, on Skep made no IBIs as well, so you're not going for that. Truth testing, we can just kick it as well, because the shell up layers and permissibility basically proves that under their own roll of the ballot, you can't actually evaluate any of the actions. So they've conceded a shell, made an IME that doesn't make sense and hasn't warranted it. So the shell should be the highest layer of the round, which we've done that work for you. Second is the permissibility stuff. Even if you don't buy the shell, it's super easy to vote on permissibility stuff, because they basically completely drop the second point on how util only evaluates end states, which means that independently takes out case as well, because you can't no actions are good or bad, and every action is justified. It's an easy, super easy negative.
Cool, let's take remaining problem.
Order is case, permissibility will be done there, and then it's just a show. Is anyone not good? Cool.
Extended role about to the best method provides a controversial reading U.S. military meaning which has the best method to rest down discourse and where the military functions. Extend the advantage quickly proper. All those at the Western Western interests is the very first meaning which results in endless structural violence such as war, the side of refugees and privilege of this and violence. After solves the effects of the military from the region was the only fact that guarantees U.S. access to the region. One is controversial reading U.S. military, but it's the only way to see the dominant narratives was the way functions. Only after then can we stop widespread destruction that the United after then can we stop the widespread destruction that the United States functions. On the premise of the argument, their argument is that the this first the United States cannot evaluate entities. But this argument is incoherent because we evaluate action to the direct consequences of the action. For example, if I were to take an action that would inflict a direct example of violence on a group of people, and then that would actually cause a group of people, which would obviously cause violence to that person, which obviously would be bad on the utilitarian because it's a direct notion of violence against that person, which means that utilitarians can obviously evaluate entities because about the direct consequences of the action. Remember, if I inflict a specific sample of violence on a specific group of people, and then that would obviously be able to evaluate whether the action was ethical or not. It means that consequentialism is able to determine whether an action is justified or not because evaluating the direct consequences of the action. The util evaluates and the end state's argument is incorrect. They also say that it's an infinite chain of action, but they didn't actually give you an exact action example or warrant as to why this is actually true, and give you an example as to how this will affect your ability to evaluate end states of action and evaluate the ethics of the action. You have no idea as to why is it unable to evaluate the impacts at the 1AC talks about, or why we are unable to evaluate or know why U.S. militarism is bad and the ways that it affects groups of people. You have no idea why this is contextual to the app at all. There is no contextual application, which means you have no reason why to not prefer the impacts of the 1AC level. If we win a 1% risk that the app is able to solve for the impacts and there's no violation on the show, then that should be sufficient. Then that should be sufficient for affirmative ballot on the show proper. There is no abuse story on it. They're talking about arguments. Obviously, rules say that if you are obviously making specific arguments have a specific implication, around them, you should have to say them out. Then you should have to say them out loud. We're winning defense on this. There's the abuse story that the 1C goes for is that you can just read infinite arguments that then you can say then you can that apply to the ground. But obviously it's not the affirmative table is not an argument. Moreover, it was clarifying the way in which the roll of the ballot functions under a certain piece how the roll of the ballot functions within the round, i.e. where the theory comes for roll of the ballot and other implications of the roll of the ballot, which means it wasn't an argument that were made, but it was a clarification. It's his defense on the center because it proves that the abuse story that the 200 won for was garbage, and there's no actual abuse story coming out of the affirmative. Also, extend the offense that they didn't really respond to was just the infinite regress argument. It wasn't infinitely making me say different things. It was more so infinitely forcing the affirmative to expect things they never did, which means that there's an infinite number of things that you expect just to make the round a little bit more clear, a little bit. If you don't buy 100% of chance that the affirmative could not engage absent us saying these three sentences at the end of one evidence, then you just vote to stop the impacts that the 1AC has discussed. Good round.